3 tips to help you make the best investments during uncertain times. Coming up. Hi everyone, this is Dr. Ernesto from AttaBoyCowBoy, and this channel we give you health and wealth tips to help you be more successful. Now today I'm going to give you 3 investment tips on how to make the best investments in times of uncertainty like right now. Tip number 1, understand market conditions. That sounds easy, but how do you do that? Well, you need to get knowledge. And remember, when you're thinking about personal finance and money, it's not just about money. It's about social factors, political factors, health factors, global warming, like environmental factors, pretty much everything. It's all encompassing. Everything affects personal finance. Remember, when you think about personal finance, people think about numbers and graphs and all that stuff. At the end of the day, it boils down to one thing: human sentiment, how we feel. You'll hear these things about consumer sentiment, investor sentiment. How do people feel? Do they feel happy? Do they feel optimistic? Do they want to invest? If they want to invest, they're going to invest. Prices are going to go up for commodities, for stocks, for bonds, for houses, whatever. If people aren't feeling happy or they feel scared, like they did at the beginning of COVID, everything's going to go down like you saw at the beginning of COVID. So it basically goes down to how people feel. That's why it takes a lot of these subjective surveys to figure out how are people feeling. And that's how we figure out how or what to do in terms of investing. So how do you prepare yourself for understanding market conditions? Well, you get information. Remember, it's not just about numbers. You want to understand everything. And some of my favorite shows that I recommend are NPR Radio, National Public Radio, PBS, Public Broadcasting System, and they have some really good podcasts like Market Watch, Morning Report, Planet Money. And let me just give you an example. Like Planet Money sounds like they probably just talk about money. They don't. They talk about socio, political, environmental, economic factors, really interesting stories from around the world. And because they know that it all influences, at the end of the day, your personal finances. So you listen to these shows, they're really interesting. They're made kind of like for entertainment, but you learn stuff about what's happening and what other investment choices people are making, countries are making, companies are making. And that kind of makes you an educated investor, and it helps you invest like a professional, like a mutual fund company or a bank, or a hedge fund or something like that. Those people have historians, they have economists, but they also have political scientists, all sorts of other people that are helping them. If you look at political donors, a lot of them are banks and financial institutions. They want to kind of steer things their way. Now you can steer things your own way by understanding what's happening, what's coming up, new regulations, new laws, tax codes, all those stuff. It sounds complicated, but if you just listen to some of these shows and keep abreast of what's happening, it'll really prepare you for what's happening in the world and how to manage your personal finances. Tip number 2, prepare yourself. Once you get all this information, what do you do with it? Well, let me give you an example. Let's talk about history a little bit. I mentioned that banks and financial institutions hire political science, historians, all these other people, right? Well, let's give you a brief overview of what happened with the Spanish flu and how it compares to COVID. In 1914 to 1918, we're at World War I. At the end of World War I, 1918 to 1920, we had the Spanish flu. Then it just disappeared. There was no vaccine, there was no treatment, it just kind of puttered out and disappeared. At the end of the Spanish flu, 1920 to 1929, we had the Roaring '20s. So it was huge economic growth. Everybody just had a great time. Stocks were going up, just like we're going through right now as we came out of these first lockdowns with COVID. It's very similar. And remember, history often repeats itself. So it's good to reference the past to get an idea of what could be coming for the future. After the Roaring '20s, what happened? Well, people overconsumed, they overspent, they overinvested, everything was going sky high, and then we had a crash. We had the Great Depression, which started in 1929 to 1933. Then we kind of just had like 6 years where we're just kind of like going along, not really going up or down. And then we hit World War II, 1939 to 1945. That was a huge economic stimulus for the entire world because everybody was spending, making bombs, blowing each other up. Exactly. Not necessarily a good thing, but it did cause more economic growth for certain countries like the United States, and other countries did not do so well. They were the ones getting bombed and everything else. It wasn't a good time. Then what happened right after the war? Well, in 1946, we invented the vaccine for the Spanish flu. So think about that. It took 28 years to make the Spanish flu vaccine. Even though it had kind of disappeared, they kept working on it just in case it popped out again. Now, reference that to current times with COVID. COVID appeared, the United States made a vaccine in 9 months. Now that's amazing. Now, a lot of people look at that and say, well, hey, I'm not taking that vaccine. They made it in 9 months. Well, actually they didn't make it in nine months. The technology, the mRNA technology, took 20 years to develop. mRNA technology is groundbreaking. It's awesome. It's going to be applied to all sorts of aspects of medicine, for medical treatments, for other vaccines, for everything. It just so happened that the apex, the point of when we had it available, just happened to coincide, luckily for us, with this COVID pandemic, and we were able to apply it to this. But it's going to be applied to a lot of things. mRNA technology, you can Google it, you can read about it. It's been being developed in the United States for about 20 years. In fact, a very intelligent Hungarian woman that helped develop this technology. So again, not knowing what's going to happen causes economic uncertainty, and it causes decreased consumer sentiment. So investments go down. Right now, things are all over the place. We have no idea what's going to happen next. The Spanish flu was pretty solid. It went for 2 years and disappeared. COVID, we thought was going to mutate slowly and we'd have boosters every like 3 years. That has not been the case. We've had a lot of variants. Now we're dealing with the Delta variant. It's causing a lot of problems. In fact, a lot of countries are going back on lockdown right now. Look at India. They went on lockdown a year after they had opened up. They were locked down and they opened up, and a year later they were worse off than they were a year ago. So it's a very unfortunate situation. Luckily, in some countries, like in the United States, we have vaccines. Unfortunately, a lot of people are still not getting vaccinated in poor countries and in rich countries because they don't believe in vaccines or whatever the case. But just keep this in mind. 90% of people that are being admitted to the hospital or dying from COVID in the United States are people that are not vaccinated. So everything is probability in life, right? If I walk across the street, there's a probability I could get hit. If I run in front of a car, there's a higher probability I'm going to get hit, right? So it's the same thing with everything else. Vaccines are kind of like that. They decrease the probability of something happening to you. Now, I got sick for 4 months with COVID, 7 weeks in bed, 2 months after that recovering, and I still have permanent lung damage and lung scarring that's like makes me short of breath a year and a half later. It's been about a year. That's not good. Because if my health is affected, obviously I'm not going to be able to work as much. I missed 4 months of work. Imagine if I didn't have any savings. I could have lost my home. I could have lost everything. In fact, over 90% of the people in the world do not have 4 months of savings and could not survive if they didn't work for 4 months. So most people, if they were sick the way I got sick, would end up in the street or living at their mom's house or who knows what. You don't want all that. If you get vaccinated, it gives you some economic and health certainty that you're going to be healthy and you're going to be able to work and be productive to keep building your personal finances. If you don't and people don't, it causes more uncertainty worldwide in terms of economic growth. That's just a fact. There are other factors to keep in mind, such as social unrest. We've had a lot of social unrest last year in the United States. In fact, the CIA puts out a very important report every 10 years. I recommend you glance over it. It's very fascinating. They basically do a political, economic, and social, and environmental, and probably everything else you could think of, analysis of every country in the world. They put it all online. It's cataloged, and you can look at it. I'll put a link to the CIA World Report at the bottom of this video so you can look at it. Very interesting. They try to anticipate where there's going to be problems like food shortages, political problems, economic problems around the world, so they can try to mitigate that. Remember, nobody wants uncertainty. Whenever there's uncertainty, that causes a lot of economic stress. Look at Brexit with Europe. Look at COVID, all these other things that happen when presidents get assassinated. There's, drug cartels, all sorts of things. Uncertainty is not good. People don't like that. It doesn't help consumer sentiment. It doesn't make you want to invest. It makes you want to bail out and avoid it. So it causes economic downturn. So the CIA puts this out. Businesses all use it. Governments around the world use it. It's a very valuable asset. Economists use it. Banks use it. Professional investors use it. Bottom line, I pretty much just invest in the United States just because of the fact that it's the most politically, economic, socially stable. That's what a lot of people look at. That's why it is the number one investment in the world for foreign direct investment and other types of investments. But there are alternatives. They give higher gains sometimes when you take on more risk. So it just depends on how much risk you want. One alternative is China. China is growing very quickly, and there's a lot of investment opportunities there. But they have a lot of issues, and people think about those things, and it affects investors' sentiment. What types of issues? I'll just touch on a few just to give you an example. The issue with the Uyghurs. They have millions of people that are Muslims, and they have them working as slaves. People don't like that. So big companies and countries are boycotting and putting sanctions, etc. Hong Kong, they're taking away their political freedoms. A lot of banks, investment companies are leaving or pulling money out of there. That's not good. They're destroying their tech companies. They have some really big and growing tech companies, but the government is strapping them down right now. They're taking control because they don't want, they want to keep tabs on their population. Remember, they have 1.4 billion people in a country the size of the United States that has 340 million. But they can only use about half of their country because half of it is a desert, the Gobi Desert. So they're packed. And it's hard to keep control of all those people. And the type of government they have, it's what they call authoritarian. They have to have very strong control. So they can't have all this open information flowing through social media and all that kind of stuff. And when the tech companies don't want to cooperate with the government, well, they're sanctioning them. So that's causing a lot of business problems over there. Let's put it that way. So if you want to avoid stuff like that, that's why I just avoid that whole type of situation. I invest in stable countries like in Europe or the United States, etc. It just depends on what your risk to reward tolerance is. Two other big issues right now: cybersecurity. There's a lot of hacking going on. That's a problem. Countries are more vulnerable. Obviously, there's going to be more economic problems. Another one is world migrations. Just get used to migration. It's going to be a norm now. Because of global warming, a lot of places in the world are going to have food shortages. It's going to be inhabitable environments. There's just going to be a lot of issues. There's going to be a lot of people migrating around the world. So get used to it. Understand it. Look at the opportunities that might exist for you there. Maybe relocating or teaching a language or whatever the case might be. There's a saying in Buddhism. It's actually a story about water flowing down a mountain that hits a rock. Now, the water's not going to sit at the rock. It's going to just flow around that rock and keep going. You want to be like that rock or that water. You want to just flow like water. You don't want to hit obstacles and just stop. You want to keep going. Remember, your whole life is going to be uncertain. All of our lives are. Political, economic, social, and your relationships, your family life, everything. You just want to roll with it and not let things take you down, whether it be financial or personal. That's going to allow you to grow more economically. So understanding the world and your own world is going to help you make better investment choices. Tip number 3. Now, what types of investments do you want to invest in? Well, specifically right now in this time of uncertainty and all these variants, and we don't know how many lockdowns we're going to have, all this other stuff. There's a lot of things going on right now. There's a lot of variability. You don't want to add more volatility to your portfolio. Look for stability. I get a lot of people asking me about cryptocurrencies. Well, cryptocurrencies are highly volatile, and it's not something that's developed yet. It's an emerging investment tool. It may be good in the future, but right now it's not good. Sure, there's people that make money in it, but you can make money going to the casino. You can put all your money on black and maybe you'll make a lot of money. I mean, maybe you'll make money in crypto, maybe you won't. I would say the odds are better. And if you have a little bit of extra money, maybe you invest in some of it so you can understand it and just start, feeling it out for the future. But I personally don't like to lose money. I like to see my money grow. So I put in more stable investments. In terms of crypto, there's just too many variables right now. China's locking down on it. India's locking down on it. US is taxing on it now. It's only a matter of time before they start locking down on it. If it grows too much, there's no way they're going to allow anything to challenge the supremacy of the US dollar. They're going to lock down on it. That's just a fact of life. So I'm not open to that type of volatility. So I kind of avoid those types of investments. Now, there's a lot of inflation. Again, same thing happened in the Roaring 20s. That's why that saying that goes, history repeats itself, is good. It's good to know what happened in the past to help you make choices for the future. We're going through a lot of economic uncertainty. We're basically going through a Roaring 20s right now in the US till we have further lockdowns later in the year, or maybe anytime soon, who knows, because of all these variants that are going around. There's already lockdowns going on in other countries, so you want to plan for it. Always plan for the worst and expect the best, okay? In terms of your investments, there's a lot of inflation. You want to put your stuff in probably the number one investment that there is for inflation, real estate. If you don't have money to buy a whole property, put your money in Fundrise or some of these applications where you can buy portions of properties and be a partial owner. And actually, and some of them you can get monthly revenue off rents and everything. It's really, really good option. We've never had anything like that. There's multiple applications and websites where you can do that now. I totally recommend that. In terms of inflation, it's one of the best. Bonds, the yields are really low. Stocks are good. You can buy some stocks, but again, we could have a big crash and we're going to have a lot of market fluctuation because of the inflation. So we can have a big crash any day now. I personally am avoiding stocks unless it's part of my portfolio where I'm looking at 10, 20 years from now, then okay, I'm leaving it in index funds like QQQ. Those are all tech. It's Google, Facebook, Uber, Microsoft, Apple. Those companies are not going anywhere. They pretty much run the whole world now. Why not invest in them? Everything from here on is going to be them for at least the next decade or two, depending on what, again, government regulations and things come up the line. But for now, the whole world depends on them. So they're not going to disappear. Invest in them. Those are the best index funds. I don't invest necessarily in individual stocks very often. Index funds spread your risk around. It's easier. It's no maintenance. Just put your money in there and leave it there. I'll talk about my ex-girlfriend. She invested like $10,000 in index funds, and they've been growing like 40% a year. And she hadn't looked at them for a few years, and now she has over 100,000. This is less than like 8 years or something. It's like, wow, she had over $100,000 from 10,000. That's great. She didn't have to do anything. Even she was shocked. I was shocked. I didn't know nobody knew it was gonna grow that well. But index funds are really easy investments. Again, in real estate. Another big investment, probably the best one, is invest in yourself. Now, how are you gonna invest in yourself? Well, exercise, eat good, read a lot of books, go to church, whatever religion you go to, it doesn't matter. Just spirituality helps teach you faith, helps you have faith in the common good, and it helps you to kind of be a more well-rounded person, to have a good mind so you can focus on things that are important for you. Everything is based on faith in society. So church is good. Anything in personal development, reading, watching YouTube videos, watching this video, educating yourself, whatever skills you have, build them up. A lot of people are not in the workforce right now because they're in lockdowns or in unemployment or whatever. This is the best time to build yourself up. After we had the Great Depression and the Spanish flu, that's when we had a lot of really successful people. A lot of really interesting and world-changing innovations came out of those times, because think about all this time we've been kind of inhibited from doing things. People are just stuck at home and they're doing things. You're going to see a lot of inventions and new ways of doing things that people have made advancements in during this time of lockdown and COVID. It always happens. It's going to happen. It's just human nature. Most people, including myself, we don't just sit there on our hands and say, oh man, the end of the world is coming. Yeah, it probably is coming, but it's okay. We do our best. We keep building. We innovate. We do better. We create. We make the world better. We become more competitive. Ourselves, our family, our country, whatever. Just do your best. Try your hardest and innovate. The more innovation you do, the better off you're going to be. Take some free online classes. There's tons of free ones. Go to Khan Academy. If you've ever checked out Khan Academy, oh my God, you can learn anything on there. You can learn all sorts of computer skills, anything. You can get a job anywhere in the world with that stuff. The United States imports about 500,000 IT and science people a year just because we don't have enough here. We have enough people. We have more than enough people. We just don't have enough people with skills that we need. People want to study like literature and history and stuff, which are important, but you got to challenge yourself a little more. Study things in STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. That's what's needed around the world. That's going to help you gain a competitive advantage and have more money available to make better investments around the world. So thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, please comment below. From Los Angeles, California, this is Dr. Ernesto Martinez. Goodbye. Thank you.